Sana.
We're back.
Hello.
Where have we been?
Okay. Listen. So, life has grabbed us by the vagine and has pulled all of our attention and energy towards, like, being in the present moment. And I think that's because, personally, I'm in such a transformational period of my life that there's just no, like, it almost felt like it was out of my hands. Like, it deserved all of my focus. Basically just being in the present moment really took all of my focus. So I feel like I'm ready to talk about things that have happened to me the past couple months, because I really just needed to take time to have perspective and to really understand what was going on, what lessons were being presented in front of me, what ways I needed to grow. And so I feel like that's my favorite way to share on here, is with things that are happening to me in real time.
I think you just needed to process it. Because,
Yeah.
I feel like it ranges depending on, like, what the situation is, but we always need time to process it. Like, the immediate reaction that our body goes into is not always, of sound mind or logical. And so you sometimes just need to take time to just chill, be alone with your thoughts, and, like, really figure out how you feel about it,
Yes, definitely. I think I was in such a uncomfortable period of, like, I wasn't sure what I was learning, but I knew I was learning, and that's definitely what I needed. I just needed to process in order to be here now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's my excuse? I don't know. I'm just gonna say depression, because I use that excuse for everything in my life.
It's a good excuse.
It's a valid excuse.
It's a valid excuse, yeah.
And just, I think also I was, like, doing a lot of new things at the same time. So my attention was everywhere, and I started to forget to take my medication every morning. And, like, you can't fuck with stuff like that, especially, I mean, in general, but mental health. It's easy to be like, oh, it's fine. Nothing bad will happen. I won't die, But my mental health took a turn, and I'm doing better now, and that's why we're here. I mean, we're here because we feel better, but more importantly, we're here because tomorrow, Tuesday, October 26th, is Intersex Awareness Day, and our good friend Courtney did us an amazing favor of coming onto our show and teaching the childrens about intersex. And so that's exactly what we're going to share with you today.
Yes, I'm so excited to have our first guest on. It just felt so fun to do, and I'm so grateful for Courtney and all that they've shared with us, and their openness and their willingness to educate and be a leader and be just an advocate and just the nicest, most loving person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like at the beginning we both had this vision that we were going to have guests eventually, and it didn't necessarily have to be anyone in particular. It could be like a friend who could share a story or be vulnerable with us, but it ended up working out that we're getting a really cool person to be our first guest who is very passionate about spreading awareness. And so for Courtney to be our first guest, I feel like is such an honor, and, like, it's kicking off our show into such a good direction, into the direction that we envisioned from the beginning. I do want to say, we posted some teasers about recording with Courtney, I think a month ago. However, the sound was not very good, and so we had to re-record it, and so that's what you're going to be listening to today. Even though it was our second time talking to Courtney, we still tried to keep it as, like, a 101 class, because that's exactly what we recorded in the first episode. So this is basically just a little intro about what it means to be intersex, and you get to hear Courtney's story. And I really hope that this is the first of many, because I think Courtney has a lot more to share with us. So I hope you guys enjoy it.
Please enjoy. my G. Here. Pa. 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 Oh, that's my guy.
I don't know.
I already did it. Comfy cast.
Heather's joining. She's wearing a sweater.
She's wearing a Halloween sweater.
Being nice and warm and comfy with us.
Spooky sweater. It says "Eek" on it. It's so cute.
So
Heather's chilling.
Yeah, Heather hopefully is gonna behave for this episode.
To be determined.
So we have our friend Courtney here.
Our friend, an icon.
Iconic.
A living
legendary.
legend. One of the best people we know. One of the kindest people we know.
Super smart.
Really smart.
Oh, gosh.
Well-spoken.
Yes, a leader.
And that ass.
And everything that they do.
And that ass.
And that ass. You're not cutting that out, Mom.
Appreciate you all. You both.
Of course. We're so happy to have you here. And to be quite frank, this is not our first time having you here. We've recorded this before.
This is round 2.
Yeah.
And it's because we recorded at Courtney's house, but there wasn't enough sound ceiling materials around, so it was very, very echoey. And so, but we're just gonna chill and try to get back to where we were.
Yeah.
It was so good we came back for a second time.
Yeah.
That's
right.
That's what it is.
Yeah. We just wanted to hang out again.
Valerie and I invited Courtney to talk about intersex everything. 101, Intersex 101.
Yes, and the day that you're listening to this is going to be Intersex Awareness Day.
October 26th.
Yeah.
It's coming up.
I've learned so much since I became friends with you, Courtney. I did learn about... I learned the term intersex in science, and I don't even remember, what science would teach you that. So, I don't even remember exactly why we were learning it, you know? But I didn't know anything other than that. I didn't realize how, that it's, an umbrella term because it's really broad and it encompasses many different things.
So speaking of it being a term, I'll just define it for folks and then we can roll from there. So intersex people experience natural biological variation that differs from what we typically think of as male and female. And those variations can happen in our chromosomes, in our hormone production and response, in our internal and external sex organs, and then secondary sex characteristics like body hair and breast development. So sex is a spectrum, just as gender is, and intersex people have always existed, even though most people don't really know that we exist.
Yeah, so that is a lot, and I would love to go into it.
Let's do it.
To be honest, we're on drugs.
Yeah.
Let's just make that clear. We're making this very clear from the jump. We're on drugs.
Drugs. What kind of drugs?
Shrooms.
Shrooms, yes, nice.
Weed.
A lot of people don't know you exist. So, what do you think is the main thing you want people to understand about the intersex community?
That's a good question. I think I think what I'm feeling and what I've heard from a lot of my friends recently is that our stories are more than our trauma, because we'll probably get into it. The intersex folks experience unique trauma in their lives, but there's a lot of intersex joy out there, and I think it's really important to have that first and foremost in the conversation. So I'm glad you asked that intersex people are beautiful. They're natural, they're part of our community that make it vibrant and make it rich. And for decades and centuries, intersex people have been marginalized and pushed to the dark corners of society, not talked about, only been jokes. So I think that's the main message is we're here and we make our communities beautiful.
Amen.
Yeah.
I will say, I agree with the fact that you're more than your trauma, because, as your friend, you're way more than, an intersex person. So I think that that's a cool way to start, just opening our minds to, what intersex means. Mm-hmm. And being able to see it as, a huge gradient of different things. Mm-hmm. Complex people.
Yeah.
That was Heather.
Dude, she's
Did you hear
it. Don't mess with Heather. She'll fuck up your big toe.
It's interesting how you mentioned that, like, you're practically invisible. You have felt invisible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's this whole community that exists. Getting to know you and getting to see the amount of people around you that, like, are on the same path to, like, have you guys be seen.
Mm-hmm.
It was really inspiring to see how many people there are actually actively working towards that.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and it just blows my mind, because how is it that I didn't know there was a whole community, and it's so beautiful.
It is. Like, when I found the intersex community, I was like, whoa. There's, like, a lot of really amazing people that are, like, doing this work, or just, like, existing as an intersex person, and, like, living their best life. And I think there are a lot of people out there that don't know that they're intersex, or don't know that that's a possibility, or that can be part of their identity. And there's been some education bills that have been passed in, like, cities and states, or just New York and New York State, and then just Austin, Texas, where, like, people will be educated when their child is born as intersex. And so, like, that's a big thing, is, like, just let people be who they are, and they don't have to fit into a box that society is going to tell them, like, oh, you've got to be male or female. No, like, you may be intersex, you may have different hormone response or production, or different sex organs, and that's okay. It's not broken. Don't fix it.
No. And don't try to deny this whole other experience that is completely different, you know? Like, that is just a denial of it when they try to box you up. It's just,
it's like with anything that's perceived as, like, different. It's like, so people have such a hard time with, like, trans and LGBT issues, is just, like, people see them as different and scary, and it's like, no, we're all just real people with unique experiences, because we're all complex.
Yeah. It's helpful to, like, start to question the gender binaries just in general. And I think that obviously would help to, like, translate when you try to understand what it means to be intersex or trans, because we are all conditioned to believe that there's only two options and you have to just choose, and then you're stuck like that forever, you know? So I think it is a really difficult thing for people to do, but it's important to, like, want to open your mind to it. It's hard work, and, like, it's just so worth it to be open to, like, a whole group of human beings that exist and that should be able to take up space, you know?
Yeah, it's so much better when we're just, like, when we see each other, we're like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And truly validate each experience. Going back a little bit, to you saying that a lot of people don't know that they're intersex. Is that, and that's done on purpose, right? Like, they're just not told.
Yeah. They could just not be told, so, like, that information could be withheld from them. Or there could just be a complete lack of understanding that, like, intersex exists, and this isn't what's happening to this person, or how their body's responding, or what their body looks like isn't a medical condition. It's just who they are. So there's, like, there's a lot of, like, awareness, that, like, that's why Intersex Awareness Day exists, is, like, we're here, like, these are the things that we face as a community, but as well, like, join us. Like, some people have the information withheld, some people don't know that they're intersex at all, and other people just didn't have that language ever, because they were maybe raised in, like, a medicalized setting, where, like for me, I never knew the word intersex until, like, 3 years ago, maybe 4. But I grew up knowing that I was androgen insensitive, and, like, it was highly pathologized. So I was, like, always going to the doctor. Like, they were trying to fix me always, or, like, making sure that my body was normal and doing okay.
You found out when you were, like, in your mid-20s then?
I found the word intersex, in, like, my mid-20s, but I've known that I'm androgen insensitive my whole life. So, like, at the age of the birds and the bees conversation-ish, my parents, like, sat me down and told me, like, you're not gonna have babies, and you have XY chromosomes, and you're gonna have to take hormones when you're a teenager. And then they revisited it in, like, puberty-ish ages. And so I knew, like, my whole life, but I didn't have the term intersex, or I didn't have identity as, like, an intersex person until a few years ago.
So it felt more like a medical condition.
Oh, yeah. it was something that was wrong with me, and then that was reinforced in a religious setting where it was like, God will make you whole and perfect in the resurrection, and like my body would be whole and I would have babies one day, because you know,
Right.
religion is,
Yeah.
just like expects us to have the religion I was born in like says that like eternity is forever, and you can have children in the next life. So
What religion was it?
Mormonism, or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
So, and then when did you leave the church?
I left the church when I was 27. Oh no, it was in 2017, so I was 26.
So it was like a little shortly after you found Intersex?
Flipped. So I left the church, realized I was attracted to women or feminine people, and then shortly after kind of just stepped into my own and have been blossoming since. So learned that I was intersex and then chopped my hair 2 months ago, so it's always an evolution.
Yay, yeah.
Heather, stop.
Stop, Heathy.
They're biting the fucking thingy.
Heathy.
Heather.
Ooh.
No.
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 I think it's common knowledge by now that, like, gender and sex are two different things. So how would you compare and contrast being intersex versus being non-binary?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Intersex is literally my sex. So I'm not male, I'm not female, I'm intersex. So biologically, or just like the way that my body was created in my mother, is between male and female. Or somewhere on the spectrum, or fuck the spectrum, and it's just this big nebulous of, things swirling around. Mm-hmm. Same applies to like gender, in my opinion, but non-binary people experience gender or their identity and expression neither male or female. There's definitely some similarities there, but one is identity and expression. So like what makes someone feel like a man or a woman, like how do they know that innately in themselves? People don't feel that, and oftentimes they're non-binary. But I've never like identified with the term non-binary, but like my gender is very non-binary, non-male and female. I just say like my sex is intersex, my gender is intersex. I am intersex, like through and through. So I assume there is people who are intersex, but they identify as a woman. Yeah.
And like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So just like anyone else, like intersex people can identify as a man or a woman or neither, or non-binary or intersex or trans.
Like
a lot
Lil
of people.
Dicky. He identifies as male.
Yeah, Lil Dicky's, hypospadias, which he openly talks about, is an intersex trait. So, Lil Dougie doesn't know, but he's gonna put the intersex movement on, so.
Yeah.
I don't know if anything's problematic with Lil Dicky, so someone can call me out, but.
Disclaimer.
We've yet to look into
Lil
Dicky.
You did mention also that the intersex community has really unique traumas. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about what traumas you've experienced, and also, or what traumas you think should be addressed? Yeah.
I think it's important to talk about because it creates some urgency around the movement and around like this topic. So intersex people experience that like variation in sex characteristics, and one of the main things that the community is fighting against is non-consensual surgeries to normalize or put our bodies into male or female. So that can happen through castration, it can happen through clitoral reduction, and it happens to normalize like penises that experience hypospadias, like Lil Dicky, where like the urethra is on the bottom of the shaft, not at the tip, and like it's functional. It works. Like peeing sitting down doesn't harm anyone's manlyhood or ability to be a happy person. So those surgeries are still happening, but also just the social stigma of maybe an intersex person doesn't have sex organs that are like outside of the binary, but their hormone production and response is maybe not what they would expect at the time of puberty. So people growing facial hair that didn't expect to, or just different secondary sex characteristics. Those folks can, or people like that can experience a lot of stigma and shame, in secrecy, or like bullying. Yeah. And so I think it's just really important to understand that like we are all unique and beautiful in our variation, in our diversity. Like that doesn't stop when we get to sex.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop when we get to gender, or the color of our skin, or where we're from, or what language we speak. Like,
yeah. Which is when you're in like high school or middle school, that's the one thing you don't want. You don't want to stand out. You don't want to be different. Right. You don't embrace that you're different. You hide that you're different. Yeah. It's like you don't know yourself enough to be confident in who you are, so you're just trying to be normal and just hide.
Yeah.
It's like a scary time, right? For all of us. I can't imagine adding that pressure of something maybe visibly being different from you, on you, or whatever, and having to go through that same hard time of puberty. Like, I was embarrassed about my period, you know? So I can't imagine, like, adding something else, or, you know.
I think it's funny you bring that up, because, Courtney, you told me one time that, like, one of the things that was hard for you is when your, like, other girlfriends would talk about their period, or, like, needed a pad or a tampon, and you always had to say like, oh, I didn't bring any.
Yeah.
But you didn't ever need them.
No. I've never had a period.
And see, I would never think of that as like a privilege, you know, to like not have to like hide anything in regards to my menstruation, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's just crazy to think that even if it's not visibly different, you're still experiencing life differently. You know, and you're, like, hyper aware of how you're different, you know?
Yeah. It's like a constant reminder.
Block. Right.
Yeah, the mental block. It also, like, middle school and high school is when I started putting walls up, and I started, like, finding these coping mechanisms that were little lies, and it was just, like, brick by brick. Like, I got really good at hiding and, like, making things up, or, like, saying, like, oh, I take pills every day because of my hormones, and, like, that's it.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's just like really that's not my truth. That's not who I am.
No, yeah, because in reality you could have just gone out and said, "Oh, I don't get a period," and then girls would be like, "What?" But I don't think they'd burn you at the stake, you know? So like, it's crazy. It's just a mental block of like shame, and it's just your own fucking vision of what it is. Yeah.
Well, and like the thing is, like, you could just say like, well, why didn't you just be intersex? Like. Yeah, I was born in 1991. The doctors operated me on at 6 weeks old and sent me home and said, like, raise your daughter. And then I was raised in the Mormon church where it was like, ooh, the boxes were very defined. Like, you are male and female, and, like, this female role is, like, very specific. So, and then just constantly reiterating, like, just be feminine, be female. All of those things just, like, stack up where, like, there are no other options. And I felt that with my sexuality as well growing up. Like there was no option to like be interested in women. And I didn't have the hormones in my body to feel those urges even, or like go through puberty ever until like my late 20s when my hormones are starting to get in line. So yeah, it's a very unique experience.
Why was it till your mid-20s that your hormones started to get in line?
So when I was 6 weeks old, I was castrated. So I don't have any sex organs internally that produce hormones. I don't have a uterus. I don't have ovaries. I don't have testes. So because my body was quote unquote normalized at birth, I don't have those organs producing hormones. And when I was in middle school, or maybe it was high school, I started hormone replacement. And it was such a low dose that I didn't notice a difference. Like my body didn't change. And I like got disinterested in them pretty quickly and was really inconsistent taking my estrogen through high school and college. And it wasn't until my mid-20s and a little bit later, like when I was really coming to like understand my identity and who I was, that I was like, wait, like I don't have any hormones in my body, or very few, and that like I should probably figure out like what my body is receptive to and what it feels best on. And so that's been like a constant tinkering for the last couple of years.
Yeah, like not
I see now.
What what is, like, your biggest struggle when you're not on hormones? Or what changes have you felt now that you are on hormones?
I grew up very, like, I didn't feel a lot, or I didn't feel emotions. But when I went on higher doses of estrogen as well as progesterone, I felt emotion for, like, the first time in my life in a very unique way. Like, or a unique depth and, like, intensity that I'd never felt before. So that was unique. My estrogen's low and I stopped progesterone right now, so it's just like I don't have that. But, like, it was cool to like feel those things or feel emotion, and it brings color to life. And so that was nice to experience. And I feel like I don't feel like a ton of emotion right now because I'm pretty low estrogen right now, but I'm happy in other phases of my life or other aspects of it.
I mean, it's cool that you can kind of decide.
Yeah. I've had to educate everyone along the way, like my provider, the pharmacy, the insurance company, to be able to get testosterone. The pharmacy was like, oh, like, I see you're getting estrogen and testosterone. Those are, like, contradictory hormones. And I was like, well, they're pretty complementary, actually. And, like, can I explain to you what intersex is and why my body needs both for maintenance and health? And, yeah.
I feel like that's so kind of you to take the time to, like, explain it. And I think it's really important because now someone else understands it.
Yeah.
And then they could teach it to someone else. Or if, like, they meet someone, they'll already have that information in their head.
Yeah. There's really no other option, though.
It's not your job.
It's not my job. I saw this stat recently in one of my courses that was talking about the high rate of trans people that have to educate their providers. And it was something like, I'm horrible at remembering numbers. It could have been between, like, 50 and 70%, but it's quite high. And I would say, like, the same for, like, intersex folks. Like, providers don't know hardly anything. Yeah.
Like, I have anxiety about, like, my health in general. And, like, my comfort is, like, I'll just go to the doctor and talk to the doctor, you know? So I can't even imagine, you know, like, being like, what's going on with me? And then going to the doctor and then them looking at you blankly like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, or there's some intersex people that are really having a hard time getting answers about their body and what's going on from their providers. So it's not only like, I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely like multifaceted where it's like, oh, we've had trauma there. They don't know who I am or what my body is like, or they can't figure it out. So yeah, the relationship with the medical community, or just in general, like, going to see a doctor is often a difficult thing for intersex folks. Yeah. Not always, but often.
So I want to get to why it's important to the intersex community to focus on Intersex Joy.
Yeah.
It's specific to that group, you know? You guys put an emphasis on that, right?
Yeah, and it's something that, like, is very... I first heard the term from someone in Europe, and it was, like, not that long ago, maybe like a year ago. And I've been seeing it and hearing it more, and I think our community has focused on the hardships that we face, and rightfully so. Ending intersex surgery is a top priority of the community. We've often told our stories and been vulnerable to tell people, hey, we're here, we exist. But that's also very tiring and taxing. And so I think that when we come into our own as intersex folks, we experience joy through, like, I've experienced intersex joy in spaces that I've claimed that joy. And oftentimes those spaces are places that I've felt trauma. That was, like, a really roundabout way of saying that. I would, like, intersex joy is, in my opinion, claiming joy in a space that you felt sorrow or trauma. So for me, that is in my sexuality, in my body especially, like, being connected to my body in whatever way that is really, really important to me. And that's, like, where I feel the most proud to be intersex, is in those spaces. And in community. I think community is a big place where we feel intersex joy, and, like, being around other folks like us and, like, gassing each other up and supporting each other and learning from each other's experiences.
Yeah, because I think you've mentioned that some people experience that feeling of, like, feeling like your body's not yours necessarily, or it's talked about so much in this way that isn't yours. that you have like this disconnection, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to reconnect with feeling present in your body and feeling like comfortable in your own skin and knowing that your body is yours.
And on that note is like you have power over your body. You have autonomy. Like the basic right of autonomy. Another one of my classes, I'm talking about my classes because I'm in a Master's of Public Health program. But another one of my classes talked about the basic right of bodily autonomy, and it was in the context of the reproductive rights for women. And back in like the 20s and 40s, there were some laws where people that experienced mental disability were being sterilized. And then in another instance, like in Oklahoma, they had laws that like if you were a multiple felon, like 3 strikes and you're sterilized. Like, and so as a class, we were shocked. Like, what the hell? Like, this is horrible. And as I sat there, I was like, this still happens. Like, this still happens to intersex people and to migrant women. Like, in the detention center last year, there's the whistleblower. So, like, bodily autonomy, when that's taken from you, is, like, extremely, it is traumatic, and it's something that if you're able to work through, like, there is like extreme power in like claiming that power back and being able to say no, or being able to go into a doctor's office and refuse an examination, a general examination, or being able to say like what hormones you want and pushing for those, like all of that confidence and that ability to stand up for yourself and your body, like for me, really gathers back to body autonomy.
Yes.
I was just thinking about like how wild it must have felt to be in a room where everyone's like outraged about something that's so outdated, quote unquote, and then you're just sitting there like, actually,
I spoke up. Actually, I was like, I had my hand raised and I could feel my heart rate racing, and I was like, I'm about to blow these fucking people's minds. And I was like, this, I made the comment in class because I was just like, we have to remember like this still happens. So, yeah.
What was the general reaction?
It was a Zoom class, so like
okay.
People don't really comment on people's comments, but I think I said in my comment, like, I think it's important to center in, like that this still happens. So it's like, I'm sure that people didn't even think about it.
Right. I'm sure people were very shocked.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting position to be in as someone who's like obviously for autonomy, and like pro-choice and everything like that. Like, I feel like for many issues, I'm like, well, if I was alive back then, I would have voted against it. I would have protested outside, of whatever, like segregated places, or it's kind of like a mirror to the face, like, oh, you're so forward all these progressive ideas. Like, what are you willing to do for this issue that's happening right now? Like, babies are being sterilized, like their gender is being decided for them. Sorry, their sex is being decided for them, which a lot of times is deciding their gender because they don't think they have a choice. And then sometimes they, lose the ability to, like, have sexual pleasure. Like, it's just, like, making a decision for a baby that's, like, days old or weeks old that's gonna affect them for the rest of their life, And the children one is what gets me the most. Because I feel like so many people are born sterile. And that, like, it happens, and it's, like, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's just sad to me that, like, there's doctors over here just, like, making people sterile, People who could have children, and have a choice to have children.
And maybe at the time in, like, 1991, my body wouldn't have been able to, like, have children, if that's something that I want, but I don't. But, like, with scientific advancement, like, who knows? Like, who knows what my testes would have been able to, I have XY chromosomes, I have, the possibilities are endless with science, and to decide that for someone at 6 weeks old is just like not okay. Not all intersex children are like sterilized in their surgeries, but it definitely happens.
So you mentioned earlier that your gender is intersex.
Yeah.
What has that journey or experience been like for you to figure that out?
Yeah, so like the boxes that I was put in as an infant and like through being raised, like, didn't allow me to experience like who I was or my gender identity. So, like, I remember as a kid, I was raised going to church, and every single week would go to church. and it's the 90s, so like I was wearing like poofy dresses that were like plaid with like the fringe and like the sleeves that are all big and poofy. 90s. And I hated it. Yeah. And so I was like looking at my closet one day, and on the right side were my dresses and the left side was my pants. And I looked at my dresses and I was like, nah. And so then I like look at my pants and I see that like I've got my khaki pants. They're nice. They don't have grass stains on them because I'm not playing in them. I want to wear my khaki pants to church. And so I go and ask my mom. I was like, hey, can I wear my khaki pants to church? She was like, of course not. Go put on a dress. And like, at no fault to my mother. Yeah. Like, that was what she was raised in. She supports me 100%. Like, she gave me an intersex flag card today because she's leaving and won't be here through the weekend to help me with Intersex Awareness Day. But like at 8 years old, like it was again enforced that like this is not an option. Okay. And then I remember in high school like wanting to wear athletic shorts to school just as like that's what I felt most comfortable in, and like I wasn't allowed to do that either. And so it wasn't until like I was exploring my sexuality that I felt comfortable like being in androgynous clothes and not feeling like I had to fit a standard or not even a standard, but just like be attractive to men. And that was like the first. Wow, yeah. Like whenever I like dressed up, I remember in college it would be like I have to put this on to be attractive for men, like to men. Like so shitty, so horrible. Yeah. Heather's doing some parkour over here. But that was like the context I was raised in, and like my sexuality has really helped me explore that. And then just this, like, when I felt like I was kind of settled in, like my intersex identity, my sexuality, like here comes gender this year, and has been a really big exploration of like who I am and my pronouns. I use they, them pronouns exclusively. I chopped my hair off a couple months ago, and more I'm leaning into like my androgynous look, or not having an expectation to like look a certain way for anyone except for myself. Yeah. And not worrying about like really simple things, like not worrying about the tone of my voice. Like, is it too deep is it not feminine enough? Yeah. You know, like things like that is like, I don't even think of that anymore. So that gender euphoria is like real. And if you haven't experienced it in your life, it's a privilege, but it's also like it's very difficult to understand. Like a lot of these experiences, like people don't get it, or they're scared, like we were talking about earlier, because they've never had to feel that. They've never had to like process their gender and their sex and their gender expression and their identity and their pronouns and all of that stuff. But I think that's where, like, empathy comes in. It's like, another person's experience is different than mine. I will not 100% understand, but I will, support them or love them or empathize. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. And I will say, I feel like the more time passes, the more you're, like, finding yourself, the more you're glowing and, like, your real inner self is coming through. Mm-hmm. Because now your insides are, like, matching your outside. Mm-hmm. Or your outsides are matching your insides.
Yeah. And it's not, like... It's not work to have to think if I need to appease a man's gaze.
Being yourself doesn't take work.
Yeah. It doesn't.
It's easy.
I put on a t-shirt with no bra and jeans and like, cool, let's go. Yeah. So much easier.
Yeah.
My hair, so much easier to do.
I met you when you had long hair, so I got to meet you, like, before and after.
No, I seriously met you before and after, like, during, I think a lot of times we think that we're, like, learning to be ourselves, but we're really just unlearning what wasn't serving us before. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something everyone can relate to. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Especially as, like, you were raised as a girl, and so letting go of that misogyny is, like, everyone can relate to that as well, I'm sure. Yeah. The feeling of, like, I didn't realize I was being trained to talk a certain way. Mm-hmm. And appeal to this certain group of people. Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah, it's really powerful. Mm-hmm.
Fuck the patriarchy.
Yeah, fuck the patriarchy.
Fuck the patriarchy. Oh, amen.
Totally.
Well, I do have one more question.
Okay.
How can our listeners, our fans, if you will, support the intersex community?
That's a good question. I think there's definitely a few ways. First and foremost, like, take this information in. Like, really take it in. Like, think about it. Think about what life would be like as an intersex person, or you're never going to put yourself in my shoes 100%, but, like, that's where empathy comes from, is, like, understanding another person's experience, or trying to, you know. Mm-hmm. Well, never completely, but I would say, like, internalize the information, and then include us in your conversations. Like, tell someone you learned something new. Or if there's a conversation happening about gender and sex, like, pop in about intersex people. You can learn a lot more from intersex organizations like Interact, which is a law and policy organization. Also Intersex Justice Project, which is grassroots organizing and direct action, BIPOC-led organization. And then Interconnect is a support group for intersex folks. So learn more from those organizations. You can follow them on social media. Donate. The intersex movement and community is underfunded and under-resourced. So any micro donations or whatever you can give is really helpful there to help build capacity in the community to do what we need to do. And yeah, there's a handful of other things that are, like, more nuanced, but I would say just be aware, talk about us, support the movement. And if you're in workplaces in, like, medicine or really anywhere, speak up for intersex inclusion. Know, like, what your local laws are regarding intersex surgery. You know, if you're in a state that has passed an anti-trans bill lately, chances are that anti-trans bill has a provision written in to allow intersex surgeries to children. So, like, these things, like, all go into building the momentum of the movement is just, like, knowledge and awareness and speaking up. And I was talking to my uncle the other night. It's like the intersex movement hasn't reached critical mass, something that an activist, Sean Seifel-Walls, talked about. And that critical mass needs to be reached. So it's just it's a numbers game. It's like getting people listening, like we're doing here. Like, thank you for having me. Thank you. Then making sure that we're continuing those conversations.
Thank you so
Courtney.
Much
for being here. Yeah.
For, like, telling us your story, being so open about it. The intersex community is so lucky to have you. The queer community, I'm lucky to have
the intersex community and you as well.
Yeah.
Love you both. It's a privilege. It's been a privilege to hear exactly your story, your experience. Yeah.
And I just hope it reaches as many people as possible.
Yes.
You know, so that there's awareness. And
we're coming.
Tuesday.
We're coming.
Yeah. You got allies. The lesbians are with you.
Cool.
And if you're listening to this on the very day that we post it, consider wearing yellow and purple, or posting about intersex organizations. That would be helpful.
Or just intersex information
out
there that you might see.
Because the 26th of October is Intersex Awareness Day, like we mentioned earlier.
Yeah. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. We're part of an effort of direct action to put up 1,500 plus posters across the U.S. and internationally. So we're going to raise a bunch of intersex art over the next few days and beautify our communities with the joy that is, you know, Intersex Awareness Day.
Yes.
Yay!
We're going to be spraying it around town. Everywhere.
Like fairy dust.
Yeah. I'm excited to participate.
Woo!
Thanks,
you.
Courtney.
Thank you, Courtney. We
Love you.
Love
you.